2025 High Limit schedule is out, plus some new rules. We're going to talk about how they may affect us. Me and Danny are both going to be in the video bringing you all the info next. Hi, I'm Billy Dietrich, sprint car mechanic and driver. I've been around racing my whole life and it's pretty much all I know. We created this channel to share the good and the bad and everything in between. Our crew may not be the most experienced or professional, but we get it done and we have a good time doing it. We'll show you what it's really like racing weekly at some of the best tracks in central Pennsylvania. I'm also going to share some sprint car tutorials, mechanics, and parts, and whatever else I feel like. So like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Enjoy the ride. Yeah, boy. All right, so what we're going to talk about first is the rule change, because that's probably what caught my attention the most. And I know, Danny, we were already talking about it a little bit this morning. So I find it kind of interesting that High Limit's kind of, I don't know, maybe going out on their own, which maybe I shouldn't find it unusual since they're learning series, but we've always kind of followed the outlaw rules as a whole in Pennsylvania. It seems like everywhere else too. But anyway, they got some new rules in place for 2025, which, hey, we'll see how that works out for everybody. Stupid flies in here. But first rule, which I thought was kind of interesting, and Danny, you can kind of give us your opinion on this, was the pole sitter of the heat race gets to pick their line, inside or outside, but then they got to stick with it. So
I'm not surprised. It's kind of like NASCAR. We do everything like NASCAR.
Oh, so Danny, you got a good point. This is
NASCAR gets to choose.
So High Limit is basically like NASCAR.
Kind of. I mean, yeah. Isn't that what they do in NASCAR? Initial start?
Yeah, you can pick the inside or outside.
Right, there you go.
So basically, we're following the NASCAR rules, which I really didn't think about that. But if you look at the schedule, it's kind of like a NASCAR schedule a little bit. They're kind of
Yeah, they're piggybacking off Kyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just be real.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
All right, so what Danny's saying is they're trying to accommodate Kyle Larson with the schedule so he can race the sprint car.
How much is he going to be able to race? Are they trying to get Kyle? Are they trying to get Kyle's fans?
Are they trying to get both?
Both? Definitely following the NASCAR schedule more so this year again than they had this past year.
So let's just talk about the schedule since we're already talking about it. More races this year. They're going to Vegas to start out, which is what you just said. It's going to be piggyback weekend with
California,
and
then Arizona or whatever,
Texas or something. Maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
So, with that being said, obviously they're going to California. You're not going to Florida, so that's going to affect you a little bit. No Florida, no High Limit in Florida.
It's freaking great. I don't have to go to East Bay.
You're happy about that?
Yes.
Unfortunately, East Bay closed down.
I don't like East Bay.
I don't got to worry about that anymore. So, they're coming to Pennsylvania. They're coming to two new tracks. What do you think of those? What do you think of the schedule overall, first of all?
I think the schedule's kind of good. It kind of goes back to the way it was not this past year, but the year before. Kind of, some of it's still kind of around the Outlaws. You know, just like, you know, they're going to be in Illinois when Outlaws are in Ohio. You know, they're going to be probably, it looks like, in New York when the Outlaws are in Ohio again, you know, like in May, you know, and kind of not getting too far away from them, probably to allow their guys to maybe go race here or there, you know, take it off to go, you know, go run Huset's or, you know, kind of like they're going to go to Bridgeport and Path Valley, like you said, two new tracks, but they're not running Friday night. And I would say that's so that way their guys can go and run the tune-up race at the Grove and get ready for National Open. Right. So some of what they're doing makes sense. I think they're trying to attract the outlaw guys to come race with them, but allow them to also race for the, you know, the big prestigious events.
Yeah. So basically what's happening now is when they come here late in the year, they come here for the Weichert Memorial early in May.
Yeah.
And then they also go to New York, that swing, let's just call it a swing, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe they go to Lernerville too. They go to Lernerville a couple times this year. So they're in Pennsylvania several times.
Lernerville's in July and September.
Yep, and Port Royal. And then the other track in PA they go to, they go to Grandview on Tuesday, I think it is.
Yeah, so the Central PA stuff's still pretty well the same.
With the exception of adding
Bridgeport
and Path Valley.
Path Valley. Neither one of them are really like Central PA.
They're not staples for our weekly program.
Right, and one's in Jersey.
Yeah, so Bridgeport's in Jersey. So it'll be interesting to see. They're going to the West Coast to start the year out, which kind of like the Outlaws used to do.
Yeah, which everybody always complained about them going to the West Coast early in the year to get rained out, which I guess ain't that big of a deal if they're just going to go there and be there for a month and a half.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially that's what they're kind of there. Once they go and start the season in Vegas, I mean, Vegas is kind of like...
It's West Coast.
It's West Coast.
It really is.
So...
Yeah, so I think it looks pretty good to me.
It's pretty cold in Vegas in March.
It can be. So...
Who knows? Who knows with the racetrack? Got to think back to Vegas, how rough and terrible it used to be as a racetrack on sprint cars. I mean, like, probably notoriously one of the worst tracks in the country as far as being big, fast, and rough. To the point where guys didn't even go there and race. They would go and just drive around and try and survive.
Or on the flip side of it, it'd be dry and abrasive.
It was
rubber up. So
it'd be rough and rubber.
It'd be lots of unknowns, but the schedule looks intriguing to me. I think it's there's some tracks that obviously lost out on dates, but
I don't think they want to come back.
Right. So like 34 Raceway, I know that the crowds there weren't that great, from what I heard.
There's a lot of places that I don't think hold enough people to pay the purse that they want.
Yeah. With that being said, Path Valley is kind of a wild card for me because I know the facility itself is not real big. So are they gonna, they're gonna probably pack the place. The pits aren't real big there either.
No, where do you watch from the pits?
Yeah, there's no place to watch.
So that's one of the biggest things is they've gone to all these tracks around the area, or not around the area, but around the country, and have, in my opinion, lacked the support. That's a known thing. I mean, there's times it was packed, and there's times where it was empty. A lot of them empty racetracks didn't come back on the schedule, and then you got to look at a place like Path Valley. I'm not saying it's unsafe. But, when they complain about safety, these guys at Safety Council or, Brad Sweet was a big spokesperson for safety. And we go to some of these places, it's like, I can't believe we're going to them tracks with high limit. Or maybe not so much Path Valley, but I think of places like Lakeside that I was at 2 years ago. They're going back there. That place is not very safe. Just some tracks that, I can name more, but I'm surprised they went back because of safety reasons.
Yeah. So they were a big, there's a big push for things to be safe and safe tracks and all these improvements. But at the same time, all that stuff costs money.
Yeah.
For the tracks to improve safety. And you can't have your cake and eat it too. So, these tracks got to have the races to make the money. And it's expensive to run a race, which you've had your hand in some promoting. So to me, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's unreachable. But for some of these tracks, it probably is way off in the distance for them to even think about making some upgrades, whether it be the configuration of the...
I think that's where the series needs to come in, and maybe some of these places that are willing to reach out and get them a date, they need maybe a little discount in some of these places. I mean, it's some way or another help them get upgraded if they're going to continue to go back to them so they can continue to make improvements.
Right. So, choose Port Royal an example. Look at all the people that place can hold. Williams Grove, you got an infield. It's endless there. A lot of these tracks don't have that luxury.
No.
So
almost needs to be a certain tier levels. But what do I know?
Well, you know a lot.
But you know what I'm saying? Like some
I'm
sort
with
of tier level. Depends on how many people it holds and So schedule's interesting. See what happens. A lot of Midwest races as well.
Yeah.
Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. That's the breakdown of the schedule. You looked at the schedule. How many races you think you'll run?
No idea. Yeah.
Too early to tell.
If the Outlaws hold true to what I've been hearing, where it's pretty much like the same schedule as this past year, I could foresee us kind of venturing out like Midwest in probably July. Yeah. Just we want to get to Eldora and we want to get to Knoxville before the big shows.
Right.
So we may go to Eldora in May. We might go to Knoxville after Speed Week, PHP Week, just trying to get out there and get some laps at Knoxville. If we're going to go to Knoxville, we need to go there more than just nationals.
Yeah.
And the closer to nationals we can go, the better. So I feel like probably the weekend after Speed Week, there's usually not anything real big going on here. We'll probably head out to Knoxville that weekend, and then on the way back, stop and run Eldora.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts also on the scheduling is, the high limit made a big splash first full year. Obviously, we saw some of the attendance issues in Pennsylvania, so it's probably a widespread thing. These tracks, like we just said, they can't pony up and make the money for pay the purse. If that's how that works, they got to make an adjustment. There's some big tracks that aren't on the schedule, like I-70, on there.
That's a big surprise to me.
That's a big surprise. They're going to shorten the track this year, but venturing out to the Wisconsin area, which has always kind of been an outlaw area and all stars, but it'll be good to see these guys get out to some, in front of some new people, some new fans, and people are going to enjoy that as well. And be interesting to see how many high limit teams are actually on tour this year after they had a full year in and can digest what it cost and all the traveling and see what the perks are going to be for 2025. Okay, so let's go back to the rule change. We kind of started on this with the leader of the heat race gets to pick their line. Like Danny said, it's kind of like the whole NASCAR thing, which is kind of trending with the high limit. Everybody kind of, you read the social media posts, a lot of high limit / NASCAR similarities with how they want to kind of conform some of the stuff. So it is what it is. We'll see how it all works. If it's more entertaining for the fans, then it'll be good. It should be good for the sport, right? That's what we're shooting for. But a couple other things they had that caught my attention was the headers. If you've been paying attention, Kyle Larson was probably the first one to do it. Was it at Knoxville?
Right before Knoxville, they did it, Peevely.
Right before Knoxville, they turned their collectors on the headers up and out, which is kind of something they did way back in even in the 80s in California, where they used to run them big mufflers. And they're not going to allow that unless it's welded together.
Right.
So
they don't want the muffler to fly off. They make a V-band clamp. For some of you that don't know, they make like a V-band clamp. It's a big old hose clamp, basically, with a bolt.
So you got a muffler like this, which probably weighs
4 pounds.
Yeah, 4 or 5 pounds-ish.
So you put a clamp on there, it's definitely 4 to 5 pounds.
Yeah, so this, instead of this coming straight out of the back of the car, parallel or horizontal with the car, all of a sudden they had this thing turned up, I don't know, 2.5.
Pretty high.
2.5 feet up, right next to the driver on both sides. So they're going to make that mandatory to be welded fast.
Not bolted clamps.
Not bolted clamp. Now, we had a little other discussion here, me and Danny did about this as well. The safety aspect of this being turned up and the flames coming out. We kind of feel like that's a valid reason to maybe not even allow them to be turned up because, let's face it, if there's flames coming out of the header.
Rumor has it that the Outlaws aren't going to allow them to be turned up because of them breaking off, flying off. I mean, the biggest thing I don't like about it is if I have them on there, I'm not going to run them because if they're on there and you get upside down, somebody's got to pull you out and they got to work around them things. They're hot.
Right. So it's right at the driver's compartment on the left side. Trying to get in and out, you're literally climbing over it. I climb in with my feet inside the Nerf bar, which sometimes I even step on the header to get in.
Right.
Now that's in the road, especially for a big guy.
Yeah, especially if like a safety worker is trying to work on somebody that say they're knocked out and the car's on fire or anything.
Yeah. Just
got to get them out. Say they're knocked out. Say they're somebody in an emergency and they're knocked out. And
right.
Any emergency worker is going to have to now reach around. The muffler comes up on the side, hot muffler.
Yep.
To get the driver.
And here's the other thing that I think about that as well. It's basically, it almost looks like it's fastened to the Nerf bar, even though it's not. It's right against the Nerf bar.
Right.
Which Nerf bars are basically crash bars. So if you take an impact on the side, that Nerf bar, is made to protect the driver area.
Think about the chili bowl.
Yeah, think about the chili bowl.
People get their mufflers smashed all the time.
All the time. So you got another, element there that could, come in towards the cockpit. So I'm not a fan of that rule at all. I feel like Danny just said that why change it? It's not broke. Don't fix it. Leave the header down. We're out of the road. It's hot. It's dangerous. You get burnt.
Should have a limit.
Yeah.
Should be able to like turn them up, say that far, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, they make turn downs. You
Turn
can
them up. You can turn them up.
Turn them up, turn them down.
But you can't come up past X amount.
Yeah, so that was another rule that I kind of thought was maybe they nipped that in the butt long before they did. We'll see how that works out too. But there's what me and Dave think about the header rule. All right, so next on the rule discussion is they came out with something that I wasn't even aware that it existed. Danny knew about this, I didn't. So I'm going to kind of let Danny talk about this, but it's a new bleeder inflator. Take it away,
tire inflator.
Because I don't even understand.
So they're going to allow a tire inflator, which Willy Willy, I think it's called, is a brand. It's on RSR's merch page. They sell it. Basically, it's an air compressor. You put it in the wheel. As far as I know, I think it constantly operates as a compressor. So it relies on your bleeder to keep it down. The biggest thing is, that thing under caution is going to keep your tire pressure up. When your tire cools down, they tend to lose air. So the inflator will keep your tire pressure built up under caution, under red. And, it'll rely on your bleeder here to keep the pressure down and regulated so it doesn't get too high. Not something I'm a fan of. Something else to fly out of the axle. But they've been using them. Guys been using them. Corey Day's been using them. Reitzel's been using them. Kind of been hidden unless you really knew what was going on, which the tech guys know about it now. But they've known about it for a while. But there for a little while it was hidden. I think Schuhart started with them at Eldor maybe 2 years ago. He had them. So not a fan of them.
So one of the high, topic of discussion I've been reading online is more money. It's another expense. So they're saying, would you see a price on them yet?
Yeah, I think they sell the Willy Willy one's like $1,350 or $1,400.
Right. So if you already have this is a Swindell bleeder setup, which I believe Jeff is also going to make some version of this.
Jeff's going to build a compressor about the same, which Swindell's newest one's smaller than this.
Right.
This is an older version. But he's going to make one that has an inflator in it. It's, I believe, the same size as this one.
Right. So if you buy a brand new set of Swindells, they're half this width. But once they put the compressor in, you're going to have a full width one again. So, a lot of people are complaining about the added expense, feeling like you need to have it to compete. Dan, I know you don't agree with the need to. You need to have it to compete at all.
I seen Swindell posted that they come out with electronic bleeder and it's been the best thing since basically sliced bread, which honestly it has for anybody who's lazy. I truly don't believe I don't think we need electronic bleeders in sprint car racing. I think that was always a pretty cool thing to have, bleeders that were mechanical, not, electric. So the fact that we're going even farther with this stage, a step, I'm not a big fan of. Kind of old school, run your old school bleeders, which is what we run. We run convoys. Great bleeders. I think these can work almost too good sometimes. That's why you see guys who don't run them. There's a lot of things you can go wrong. Battery goes dead in these things. Let's just say you run the Willy Willy one and the battery's alive and your Swindell battery goes dead to regulate the pressure going down. Right. It's going to keep on pumping it up. Or maybe when Swindell makes it, is the battery going to be able to run the bleeder control and the compressor? Right. Is it going to have enough charge? When is it going to just, when's it going to quit? Then you're going to come in with high pressure as well, because you're not reducing the pressure when it needs to be reduced.
Yeah, so there's a lot of unknowns on this, but what we do know is it's going to cost you more money, which is the biggest thing I saw online is people feel like they're going to need to buy these bleeders to compete. Here again, like Danny just said, that's not necessarily true. He doesn't run the electronic bleeders. So, like I said, I didn't even know this even existed. This was even a thing, but I got educated a little bit here too. So, another interesting thing that they come up with that apparently has been out there for a while, and
might be something that they had to allow to get a few teams to stay on the tour.
That's true.
Think about it. There's always the backstory of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics in this stuff. Unfortunately, this speaks
Yeah, maybe RSR wasn't going to go on a tour unless they did this, which they sell one already.
Yeah, well, maybe. So
and maybe not that it's them, but on their website they do. Someone they know.
Yeah,
and Corey Dave's been running it.
Yeah, that's
or did run it in California, I should say. Maybe they might not have been running it with high limit, but might be a contributing factor that the 14 car wants to be on the tour. Maybe they're allowing stuff like this because they feel like they're one up on somebody else.
Could be. It'll be
politics.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how all this shakes out. When the other touring group comes out with any rule changes they may or may not allow. So that's the skinny on the bleeders. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is they're going to allow cockpit adjustable shocks. One shock is going to be cockpit adjustable. Now you can change that shock, as far as I know, to whatever corner you want. So we just have a pro shock here, like we sell in the shop here. These are already adjustable, but you have to adjust them manually. You have to turn them, not while you're not in the car before you get in the car. So this is a rebound adjustable shock. They make them where you can adjust the compression going in or the rebound coming out. They had cockpit adjustable devices, 20 years? I mean,
they still do. USAC guys still run.
Yeah, so USAC guys still run.
They just run. I mean, there's series out there, just not in the wing sprint cars that run cockpit adjusters.
Right. So there was a point in time where there were no rules. You could use cockpit adjustable shock. You could use weight jackers on your torsion stops. You wanted to do that, which
a lot of guys did.
A lot of guys did. I don't know that it really was a big expense.
Considering everything else.
Yeah. So what do you...
I mean, you can go buy a cable probably for a shock for less than $300. There's probably so many used ones out there floating around for some of the older style shocks. They had these things 15 years ago and outlawed them, and everybody had them.
Right.
I think it was basically to get people to catch up to guys like Steve Kinzer. Steve, think about Steve and Fred and Lance and Greg.
Sammy's one down.
Sammy, they get a caution, man. They tune their car right in. They have a whole different race car because they had 4 shock adjusters and 2 weight jackers.
Right.
And change whole car.
And they had the knowledge of what they needed in the car because they were, very mechanical with the car.
Right. So I feel like they removed them to get people to kind of drivers who weren't mechanics, chassis setup guys, make them catch back up so that way people couldn't dial their cars under caution.
Yep. So obviously you're going to, that's not a real big expense. So you're going to race with high limits. If you were, if you were going to the races tonight, would you have the capabilities of adjusting all 4 shocks? Obviously, you can only do one, but would you be prepared to move?
Yeah,
move on to go in a sense. You know what I mean? Because that's what guys are going to want to do.
I think when you go to depends where you're going to go is where you're going to have your cable hooked up, or maybe even throughout the night change it. So I don't know how they're going to do the rules. Is can you have as many cables as you want, but you're only allowed to have one hooked up?
Right.
If they do that, there's going to be guys that are going to find a way to I feel like you're going to unplug it when the race is over somehow. Whether it's stationary at one point, you just somehow pull it out. I'm not sure, but I would say they're only going to allow one knob in the car. You're not going to be able to have all these knobs and only have one hooked up.
Right.
You're going to have one knob and one knob only. So I think you're going to have to just be transparent.
Well, as far as the shock rule goes, I think it's cool. I like it. I think that it's a cool thing to give some more, adjustability to the driver as the track changes and stuff like that. They could do all 4 shocks if they wanted to, but I think it's a good idea is my point. I like the rule, and hopefully it works out for everybody this coming year. All right, so the last rule that we want to talk about is they're going to allow an 1.5" top wing wicker bill, where 2024 it was only allowed to be a 1 inch. Before that, it was up to 2 inches. Now we're back to 1.5 inches for the high limits. Was the racing that bad? Was the racing that much better? I have no idea. I guess we'll find out. I'm not sure the difference between going just a 1/2 inch or going a whole inch. Why you would do one and not the other. What's your thoughts?
I've thought about this a little bit, and I think you're just working with such a minimal adjustment there. 1.5 inches. 2 inches from a 1 to a 2 is a pretty big deal. But to go to 1.5 inches, I think it's kind of like splitting hairs. I think it's going to help a little bit, but the fans probably won't be able to see much difference in the racing, which is good. But it might make some of us drivers happier. I wouldn't really say myself, but some other drivers happier that they feel like maybe they got a little extra downforce, but it's not that much.
Yeah. So it's like Danny said. I kind of feel the same way. Like if you're gonna go with half, you might as well go the whole way.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like.
I've even thought about just having a 3/4 wicker bill and a 1.5 wicker bill.
There you go.
You're gonna run when the track, you run a 3/4 when tracks fast. You don't need 1.5, or you just go to the 1.5 and be done with it.
Right. Yeah. So it'd be like what it used to be, but less.
Right. I mean, how are you gonna know when to change a 1 to a 1.5 all the time?
Right. Or you just
put the 1.5 one all the time.
Leave it all the time. So I don't know if that. I don't understand that rule. I read it. And I read it a couple times. Wondering why. Is it gonna make the racing better? Like Danny said, I have no idea. Definitely, when you went to a 2-inch wicker bill, it changed the car a lot. It made a big difference. So, only time will tell on that. So yeah, that's the rules update. Now, I did want to touch on one more thing. I will get your input on this. I know that there was a while back a post going around on Facebook about tires. Always talking about tires, changing tire compounds, doing this, doing that. No rule changes as far as tires go that we can see coming. But hot topic was, well, you need a softer tire, you need a harder tire to make the racing better. Would that really make the racing better, you think? I mean,
probably not. Every time they implement a harder tire, it always ends up, over the years, it seems like it gets a little softer and a little softer and a little softer. The tire we had, the new tire we got, was it last year before?
Yeah, two years
ago. Like it was supposed to be harder than what it is now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like gives us this tire, says it's harder, it is, and then they slowly work their way back to the point where we're wearing tires out nonstop, and then they still get the same money in return.
Right. But if you went with a softer tire, would it make the racing better? Would you have more? Right
now, nowadays, I think just too soft, you just end up with more rubber on the racetrack, which is no good for anybody. Then you're going to see more blown tires. If anything, they need to just make one more step difference, and maybe in construction, make it known there's a different construction you could run, like the RD tire to the old D tire.
Right, so different sidewall.
Different sidewall. Make it leave the same compound, just make a floppy sidewall and a stiff sidewall.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. If you had a guy, was more of a less of a finesse driver,
right?
You might want the stiffer sidewall,
right,
to get up there and just hammer the cushion. Or if you had a guy who wanted to be more of a finesse, not bang the cushion through the slick, you want a little more give over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like the RD15 to a D15 to a D12 back in the day. Like certain tracks, the RD was better. It wasn't really much of a compound difference, just different type of material that some guys preferred this one and some guys preferred that one. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a choice.
Yeah. Well, that's all the rule updates from High Limit. We touched on all that. One thing that I'm going to be interested in seeing what happens next, like I said earlier, is what the Outlaws do with their rule package. Even more so, what happens here in Central PA, because this is where we race all the time. So, is there any rules you'd want to see changed around here?
Nope. Just follow everything. I mean, I think what they did here was good. I mean, other than the bleeders, hopefully people don't follow with the bleeder deal. But I think everything else is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You got the wrap on what we think about the High Limit rule changes. Just came out this week and their schedule. Appreciate Danny stepping in here and giving us his input on everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment below, and we'll see you on the next video.